The DC Streetcar is only a decade old, but it is being shut down next year. And this is a bad idea. It wastes money, the future is uncertain. With the new sports venues coming to Washington, D.C., we may end up really needing it. Today, I'm going to discuss why shutting down the streetcar is a bad idea and what we can do to save it. It involves football. When I moved to Washington, D.C., it felt like I was stepping into a time and place of optimism. D.C. is a beautiful city, and it's not just the monuments and museums, although those are cool too. The city is a patchwork of beautiful neighborhoods with rich history and kind people. The people that have lived here their entire lives take care of their home, and the people who moved here for work are often dedicated and driven individuals. Looking at the transportation system, things felt optimistic as well. The Metro, which was once infamous for its poor schedules and high flammability, was now catching up on maintenance. Frequencies were high, ridership was booming, and there were ambitious expansion plans. I enjoyed getting to know this region's transit system, as well as cycling and walking around. But in the last year or so, morale in the city has, tanked. Thousands of talented people, including many dear friends of mine, have lost their jobs. The city has been blocked by Congress from using its own money, and now we have to deal with people deciding the data is wrong, our city is apparently ugly and dangerous. The only thing that can fix it is basically a photo op. But bringing the conversation back to transportation, it would be easy to blame everything bad on one group of people in power, but that wouldn't be the full picture. If you care about living in a clean and safe city for everyone, the decisions at the regional and city level the last year, even before the election, have been quite disappointing. A prominent bike lane project was canceled after lobbyist opposition, and more bike lanes across the city are now having security features removed. Metro shelved their expansion plans indefinitely, meaning that there won't be any new lines, at least until I'm an old man. And the mayor and her administration cut the circulator bus service in January without adequate replacement, in my opinion. This summer, the next victim was announced, the DC Streetcar. After the mayor announced this summer that the streetcar would be phased out and replaced by buses in the next 2 years, this week we found out it's actually being shut down in March already. The DC Streetcar is a 2.2 mile or 3.5 kilometer tram line running in Northeast DC. It connects Washington Union Station with Oklahoma Avenue, with 6 intermediate stations along H Street and Benning Road. Rides are free, but the system is not run by WMATA, the agency that runs the Metro. Instead, it is owned by the District Department of Transportation, from here on out referred to as DDOT. And DDOT is planning to get rid of the streetcar, just like they got rid of the circulator. The DC Streetcar is often the butt of jokes in the transit space here on social media. Its short length and low speeds are apparently quite entertaining. I swear, if I have to hear one more YouTuber go, haha, the bus is faster, haha, It's disliked by many city employees, disliked by transit enthusiasts, so is it really surprising that the city would shut it down? Maybe not, but that doesn't mean it's a good idea. I, for one, think this is a bad plan, the opposite of what the city should be doing. I will explain why, but I will also offer a very practical, inexpensive solution. First, though, I have to admit that with everything going on in DC right now, it can feel a little weird to be advocating for this. DC folks have a lot of things to be concerned about at the moment, but I do think this is the right thing to care about and the right moment to care. Putting our imagination skills to a serious test, let's assume that those in the nation's highest office are serious about making DC even safer and more beautiful. Assume they somehow just forgot to ask city residents for input. Assume that cutting our safety budget was just an accident. There is one solution that they could pursue that really would make DC safer and more beautiful: better public transportation. Let's save the streetcar. That will make DC an even better city. Before I talk about why the DC streetcar should be saved and how to do that, we need to know the context of how it got here. The DC streetcar is not inherently bad, contrary to what most people, even urbanist and transit YouTubers, will tell you. Yes, in its current form, it is just about the worst way you could build and run a streetcar. But that does not say anything about the streetcar as a mode itself, nor do I think does it advocate for its removal. So like I said earlier, the streetcar is a 2.2-mile long line along H Street and Benning Road in Northeast DC. It opened in 2016, and the early 2000s were a time in which many US cities built downtown streetcars. Examples include Portland, Oregon, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Oklahoma City, and Kansas City. These streetcars have seen varying levels of success, and critics claim that these were built more to serve as a catalyst for economic development in certain neighborhoods than as serious public transportation. For the H Street line, it's undeniable that that was certainly one of the goals, and it has been successful in accomplishing that. H Street, a neighborhood with a complicated history, was an area neglected for many years. The streetcar, in part, encouraged people to come here to eat, shop, and live. Housing prices went up. We can totally have a separate discussion about the merits and issues of that kind of gentrification, but the fact is, if that was one of the goals of the streetcar, it achieved it. True, some streetcars around the country really do only serve as downtown gimmicks for tourists, but the DC system was supposed to be a full-blown transit network, a second metro, if you will. While the H Street line is the only streetcar currently in DC, it was supposed to be part of a much bigger network. The metro here is one of the best transit systems in the country, but people have correctly pointed out that its strength lies in bringing people from the suburban areas of Maryland and Virginia into the city. The metro is great for some urban journeys. I certainly use it a lot. But for other trips within the district, it isn't always the most convenient. The streetcar was supposed to fix this, providing high-quality rail service on traffic corridors not served by the metro. A streetcar had been discussed since 1997, only 35 years after the last lines of the old trolley network were closed down. Look at this map. With 37 miles and 8 lines, the tram would have taken you all across the district. It would have rivaled the networks found in European cities. The current H Street line, for example, was supposed to extend west to Georgetown and east to the Benning Road metro station. But then came construction. If you ever want a lesson on how not to do things, spend an afternoon reading the Wikipedia page for the H Street streetcar. Here is a short, incomplete summary. The rails were actually laid between 2007 and 2011 because the district was repaving the road anyways, and it seemed logical to just go ahead and install the tracks, otherwise you'd have to rip up the road again. This is probably the smartest thing they did in this whole saga. One conflict that came up pretty early on had to do with electricity. If you've watched my video on DC's original streetcar network, the trolleys that ran from 1862 to 1962, or if you attended my lecture at the Trolley Museum, huge thanks to everybody who showed up, you might remember that Washington had a ban on overhead wires. It's why the old trolleys drew their power from underground conduits. Technically, despite that law being from the 1890s, it was still on the books, and certain groups were lobbying hard to prevent the streetcar from happening unless it was built without overhead wires. See, overhead wires are way cheaper though, and better in DC's climate, so eventually council passed a law saying that they were permitted. But this did lead to delays, as did political maneuvering by council members, constantly threatening to withhold funding, meddling from the Federal Transit Administration, who also withheld funding, the delayed construction of a maintenance facility, disputes between tram manufacturers, and endless discussions about if they should create a new governing body or invite private companies to operate the line. In 2015, the director of DDOT said the line might never open, even though it had been built, if an independent review found any, quote, fatal flaws in it. Fortunately, no such flaws were found, and the H Street line finally opened on February 27, 2016.
Now arriving at 8th and H Street.
Wait, so they were about to build an entire line but never run any trams on it? Well, silly as it sounds, it's not like they hadn't done that before. In the Anacostia neighborhood, you'll find several miles of abandoned streetcar tracks.
So, if you take the Metro Green Line to Anacostia Station, you walk for about 5 minutes, and then you wait at this busy intersection for about 10 minutes. Then you'll find yourself on Firth Sterling Avenue. And here at Firth Sterling, there's something really weird going on.
These are not a remnant of the old trolley network. No, this abandoned line was built in the 2000s. Anacostia has traditionally been an economically disadvantaged neighborhood, but one where many residents are transit dependent. It was one of the last neighborhoods in the city to receive metro service, when the Green Line opened in 1991. And so city officials wanted to prevent that mistake when building the streetcar. They decided Anacostia was going to be the first neighborhood to get a tram. While plans called for an eventual line to connect to Navy Yard and Minnesota Avenue, the demonstration line would just run through Anacostia, using a little-used railroad known as the Shepherd Industrial Spur, owned by freight company CSX. This all-but-abandoned line was once nationally important, and I explain that story in more detail in my History of Railways in DC video, link in the description. This streetcar was initially going to use diesel rail cars, but later they decided to use electric trains. DDOT even held a groundbreaking ceremony in November 2004, assuming that since CSX had basically abandoned the line, it would be perfect for a streetcar. But just 2 days later, CSX said, actually we didn't abandon the line. If you want it, it's going to cost $16 million. What followed was bickering back and forth over the line ownership. Eventually, DDOT decided to build the line in the street instead, so the tracks were laid, but the completion date kept getting pushed back, and as we can see, the line never saw revenue service. My friend Andy on Track has a great video going into much more detail. You should check it out. Anyway, back to the H Street line. If anything, the construction of both of these lines are a valuable history lesson when it comes to planning future projects. Despite that, for the last decade, the H Street line has been running, giving people a free ride along H Street and Benning Road. Personally, I'm a really big fan. Yes, part of that is just because I like trams, but despite not living in the neighborhood it serves, I still find myself using the streetcar quite a bit. Some of my friends live along the line, and it serves several Aldi grocery stores where I like to shop.
See, I live in the city without a car, but I still need to eat, so I do my grocery shopping using like a little rolly cart. There's an Aldi right on H Street, and I prefer to just wait for the streetcar because it is so much easier to roll this cart onto the streetcar because it's level, no need to navigate tight aisles.
As a semi-regular user, I think I can point out its flaws with a bit of nuance. The DC Streetcar certainly has its flaws. Like I said earlier, it's a good concept that has been very poorly carried out. I already said this, but I get really tired of the constant negative attention this line gets. I think it's misdirected. The streetcar's biggest flaw is the location of the tracks in H Street. They are in the right lane in mixed traffic. Between the sidewalk and the tracks are parking spots. What happens when a tram is running in mixed traffic, not separated from cars? It gets stuck. Spend any amount of time alongside the tracks here and you'll see for yourself that cars are constantly double parking on the tracks. DDOT even has tow trucks driving up and down the street to get them out of the way. Because streetcars can't physically leave the tracks, a parked car like this is a huge problem. And proponents of buses argue that a bus could avoid such obstacles by driving around them. True, although let's not pretend like people don't park in bus lanes too. Now, I do find it a little weird that drivers literally can't follow the law, yet somehow the streetcar is the problem. But there is an easy way to avoid this, a dedicated right-of-way, which we see literally further down the line on Benning Road, where the tracks move to the center of the road. Nobody really talks about this half of the streetcar, which functions much better, because the bad part commands more of our attention. The second flaw is that it has no signal priority. The trams have to wait at every traffic light, often missing the light because they're picking up passengers. It's particularly bad right before Union Station, where trams have to switch from the side of the road to the center. This light lets every other mode go first. Sometimes it takes more than a minute before the tram can even move. I will discuss some of the other issues in a little bit, but these two I believe are the main issues, because I think people choose transit for its speed and reliability. There are just too many successful trams around the world, though, to fairly conclude that it's the streetcar that is the problem. For example, I'm from the Netherlands, and we have trams in 4 of our major cities that carry millions of people a year. Take Rotterdam, where I went to high school. The trams here see 160,000 riders every day. For reference, take the ridership of both MARC and VRE, combine them, and then multiply by 5. You still won't reach that number. And that's in a city where trams compete with the metro, with trains and buses. But Tom, don't you know all trams in Europe run in their own dedicated right-of-way? Really? Are you sure about that? Because this is in Rotterdam. In fact, it's in one of the wealthiest, greenest neighborhoods, Kralingen. The tracks are in the middle of the street, just like on H Street. The big difference here is that the tram wasn't forced onto a street built for cars. The cars are guests on a street built for the tram. When the tram stops, traffic stops for it. And parking? Well, that can be done literally anywhere else. You don't even have to travel to Europe to see examples of this. When I went to Detroit, I never expected to be pleasantly surprised by the queue line. But this streetcar hugs the curb the entire way, with no parking alongside the tracks, and so it can hit decently high speeds. To fix the H Street segment of the streetcar, it requires DC leaders to change how they see transportation. Streets here always have to be everything all at once. They have to be thoroughfares. They have to have destinations. They have to be parking lots too. Every block always has to be accessible by car from every direction, and it leads to traffic situations that I have to imagine drivers must hate too. It's no wonder that throwing a streetcar into the mix is doomed to fail. So I get accused of being a car hater a lot here, which okay, thanks, I guess. Glad my message is getting across. But friends, is it really hating to ask for just one street to be a little bit less for cars? In a city where literally every street puts cars first. More than 30% of district residents do not own a car, yet the internet calls us entitled when we want people to not park in the lanes that are meant for us. This leads me to the bus. The D20, formerly known as the X2, benefits from the car infrastructure and thus in some cases is simply a better option for passengers. The D20, which runs parallel to the streetcar on H Street and Benning Roads, starts at Farragut Square near the White House and goes to the Minnesota Avenue metro station. It's basically the route that the streetcar was intended to have. So if you're making a longer journey, you're more likely to take the bus. Another flaw of running the bus and the streetcar on the same street is that they don't share stops.
So here, I'm at the 8th and 8th Street, wow, that's hard to say, bus stop, which is on the other side of the street as the streetcar stop. Meaning, if you're going to take the bus, you're going to wait here, and you can't just get on the streetcar because it shows up earlier.
This is because Metro was worried that the streetcar platforms would be too high for the buses. So as a result, rather than people boarding whatever vehicle shows up first, they have to decide in advance, are they going to board the bus or the streetcar? And the one last flaw of the streetcar, and this one I believe we can tackle first, is that it's hard to find. It's not shown on the Metro map, it's even pretty hard to see on the bus map, just presenting itself as a thin, faint yellow line. On the Metro, they didn't even announce that you could transfer to the streetcar until summer of 2025, when they updated the announcements coming into Union Station.
Connection is available to Amtrak or Commuter Rail, Virginia Railway Express, Greyhound and DC Streetcar.
Speaking of Union Station, let's try to transfer to the streetcar from the Metro. First, you have to make your way up to the Amtrak boarding gates. Then you have to go up the escalator, following signs to the streetcar. This will bring you to the intercity bus station, which you then have to walk all the way across until you reach H Street. You have to wait to cross the street, and then finally you find yourself in the median, and then you walk all the way down to get to the platform. Now, terrible as that transfer is, it's not entirely the streetcar's fault. The trams were initially, at least temporarily, going to stop in a tunnel underneath Union Station. There's going to be a short, easy transfer to the Metro, but the owner of the tunnel preferred to use it as a parking garage instead, so the streetcar was moved up to the bridge. So the DC streetcar clearly needs fixing. Shared stops with buses, their own lanes, signal priority, these are easy fixes. So why do we talk about saving the streetcar? That sounds pretty drastic. Well, it's because, like I said, the city wants to get rid of it. The streetcar costs $10 million a year to operate, replacing the aging trams, which apparently after a decade are at the end of their useful life, is estimated to cost $11 million per vehicle, and extending the line to Benning Road would cost $100 million. City Administrator Kevin Donahue is quoted in the Washington Post as saying such costs are unjustifiable. And DDOT Director Sharon Kirschbaum described these costs as exorbitant. I asked DC Councilmember Charles Allen, who represents Ward 6, if he agreed.
Councilmember Allen's office, may I help you?
Hi, just wondering if there would be an opportunity to take a statement on the future of the DC streetcar.
Yes, I would email him directly and our communications person.
Okay, thank you.
Here is his statement. I am extremely disappointed to see the mayor walk away from the DC streetcar. The streetcar adds to the unique flavor of H Street and has shown steady ridership even as other modes have suffered. But I can also acknowledge the streetcar's promise was never realized once it was clear westward expansion was blocked and eastbound expansion was always delayed. The streetcar helped shape H Street Northeast into one of the most interesting and diverse neighborhoods in the region, and we should not lose sight of the reason why it had such a profound impact. As we look forward, we can still do that. As the development of RFK comes into focus, this is exactly the time to plan for the next big investment in the east end of the city, connecting the RFK campus to Benning Road, H Street, and Union Station. Hold on, council member, I'm just about to get there. But first, if they are getting rid of the streetcar, what's coming in its place?
The likely plan is to retire the streetcars in 2 years and have electric buses using the overhead wires that are already in place.
A bus. Because of course it's a bus. They want to replace the streetcar with some sort of electric bus, one that would use the overhead wires already in place. So I'm assuming you're not buying battery electric buses, since just last year you pretended that those were the reason you couldn't run the circulator anymore.
The city administrator described electric trolley buses, so you can take advantage of the catenaries that charge the streetcar. But
Ma'am, the streetcars don't charge. But anyway, go on.
But they're rubber tires, and that means that it's far less expensive. You don't have to lay down tracks.
It seems we're doing trolley buses. Cool. I saw a different YouTuber a few months ago talk about this and say that they thought this was a great idea. A great idea. Yeah, sure, except what did she say again?
But they're rubber tires.
So fun fact about those, they don't conduct electricity. It's why trolleybuses have 2 poles, one to draw the electricity, one to return it, which means you have to hang up a second wire along the entire line. And let's be real, you probably have to replace the first wire anyways. That's not cheap. So the director said this,
And that means that it's far less expensive. You don't have to lay down tracks.
and I'm assuming she knows that the tracks have already been laid and that she means you can go farther than the existing 2.2 miles. Which, I guess, sure. Well, to go farther than the wires, are you going to build the wires out farther? I don't think so, but if not, you'll need a bus with a pretty hefty battery. That's heavy. More road maintenance. And what are you going to do with the stations? Some of them are in the middle of the street. Do you know why Seattle doesn't use trolley buses on their G-Line BRT like they wanted to? Because New Flyer is the only company that builds trolley buses, and they said it would be really, really difficult to build a trolley bus that had doors on both sides. Not impossible, but not cheap. See, the DC budget is limited, I don't disagree, but by the time you've paid to completely retrofit the line and order the most custom-built buses in the United States, you're going to look at that initial $11 million per tram vehicle and think to yourself, that wasn't so bad after all. I would like to have a conversation with people at DDOT to gauge just how much thought they've put into this. Mark my words, in a couple of years after we've spent $200 million on building the streetcar and then millions more to study the proposal of this new bus, what's going to end up happening is Metro is just going to run their D20 like they do right now, but with the occasional battery electric bus. Hey guys, so after I finished writing the script for this video, the DC Council actually announced that instead of phasing the streetcar out over 2 years, they're going to shut it down completely this coming March. Obviously, there's no way they're going to have a trolley bus up and running in the next 5 months. So I guess I was more right than I thought, that we're going from having the streetcar and the bus to basically just the existing bus. Now, this isn't great for residents. It's also worrisome for the drivers of the streetcar. Back when the city closed the circulator, the drivers did not get a good deal, which makes this next part of the video all the more important. So supporters of these cuts say that we need to be realistic about the money. There, I think my analysis was pretty realistic. It also just feels wrong to tell non-drivers in DC that there is no money for their relatively cheap transit systems when apparently we have $515 million to renovate Capital One Arena over 3 years. and $1.1 billion to build a new football stadium at RFK. It's the second most expensive football stadium ever built, and I, the taxpayer, have to pay for a third of its development. We could buy 100 new streetcars with that money, and all we need is 6. The decision to build the new RFK stadium has been made, and if you ask me, now that that's the case, sports may just be exactly what we need to save the streetcar. So here we get to the constructive part of the video, the part where we solve the problem. I'm not going to just critique and then go, okay, solve this, good luck, bye. Let's find a practical way to prevent the streetcar from shutting down. Let's make it better, make it more popular. Of course, the expensive solution is to build more. Build the extensions, create the originally intended network, improve the existing line so the cars are out of the way. While I still think those steps are necessary eventually, there are simpler solutions that don't require large amounts of capital funding. Some ideas are super simple. I have a 2-step plan to save the DC Streetcar on a budget. Well, I say I, but really it was a whole team of family and friends that helped me come up with this idea. Step 1. Increase awareness. I think many people do not know that the DC Streetcar exists, or if they do, they're not really thinking about it. Unless you're near H Street, there really are no signs of it. It's not on the Metro map, it's barely on the bus map. Like I said, it only recently got added to the Metro announcements, which is a good first step, but next I think we have to add it to the Metro map. I know, you like the aesthetics, it's just one line, it'll be okay. We'll give it a maroon color and the letter W. Voila, now people who navigate using the Metro map see that the streetcar is an option. Here comes step 2, and it involves football. When the new stadium opens, the Commanders will move from Maryland to the city. By 2030, the old RFK structure will have been torn down, and in its place will be a new stadium, commercial area, and residential area. As much as I might be uncomfortable with how it's being paid for, it does have the potential to be a very nice place that will attract a lot of visitors. So how will these visitors get here? Preferably by transit. The last thing we want is for football fans and concert goers to drive into the city. This clogs up the streets, pollutes the air, and is dangerous, especially for kids in this otherwise pretty residential neighborhood. So the one option is to build an infill station on the Metro, which I support. Let's do it. But look at where that potential station would be. Right by the end of the streetcar, literally right there. DC is building an entertainment and residential super complex, right at the end of a transit route connecting to its main train station. And they're closing the transit route. It's ridiculous. Here's what to do instead. Let's rebrand the DC Streetcar into the Commanders Express, a high-capacity shuttle connecting Union Station with the Commanders Stadium, serving bars, restaurants, and houses along the way. The main advantage of trams over buses is that they have a much higher capacity. Only one driver is needed to move a larger number of people. That's why they work so well here. Let's change the red to maroon and the yellow to gold. We'll add stickers of the players to the side. We'll have the players record the announcements on board, have the team fund it, make it theirs. It isn't that unusual. The Hop in Milwaukee is funded by the Potawatomi Casino. The Q line in Detroit had their naming rights bought by Quicken Loans, hence the Q. The Commanders moving to DC is being hyped up a lot. They should use this hype as an opportunity to adopt the streetcar and make it their own. Plenty of football fans will be coming from Maryland and Virginia. If they take the train into Union Station, the Commanders Express will give them an affordable and safe way to get to and from the game. Same for concert goers. And with a steady ridership base and funding, the tram will continue to be an option for residents, business owners, and shoppers to use when there are no events at RFK. Honestly, I would love to make this pitch somewhere officially. I think it's a unique opportunity, one whose potential can only really be reached if it stays a streetcar, not if we waste tons of money to convert it into something worse. To summarize this rather long video, the DC Streetcar has a lot of flaws, but the city owes it to us residents to fix these mistakes instead of erase them. They should take our taxpayer dollars and our transportation needs seriously, and this new football stadium might be the perfect opportunity to turn the streetcar into something useful. So those in favor of my plan, comment Commanders Express in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching today. Please subscribe to Trains Are Awesome, and we'll see you next time.